Everybody, welcome back to Hartford, where round one is about to get underway. There's a storm brewing outside and in here in Connecticut, and I can't be more excited to get this thing underway. How about you, Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the second live event back, right? So you still have all the excitement that carried over from last time. Big things though, new Forbidden Limitless, new cards in the format, tons of new decks. It's really, really fun to be playing Yu-Gi-Oh right now.
And 1,238 duelists have shown up this weekend to play. And there's a whole lot of different things about the YCSs these days ever since we have to switch over. There's a lot of online pre-registration, that sort of thing. So we get an idea of how many people are going to be here, and it turned out that very close to that number actually arrived. And two of our duelists who arrived are getting ready to take part in our first feature match right now.
Yeah, that's right. Let's go ahead and head to our feature match table for round one of YCS Hartford, Connecticut. Let's take a look at our players. First up, we have Nicholas. He's from Frederick. Favorite card, Flamvell Fire Dog. I haven't seen that in a while. Maybe one of those duelists who's a fan of 2010 formats like Edison.
Old school.
Yeah.
And then we have Joseph from Hyattsville, Maryland. His favorite card is Mass Hero Darkloth. You can see he's not a fan of fun by his mannerisms up there, and maybe that's why Darkloth is his favorite card. Likes to lock people out of their graveyard effects.
Yeah, it could be. I feel like there's two kinds of hero players, right? There's ones that like Darklaw and ones that are more of like the Jade Yuki fans. Yep. Two very different breeds, but we see where he falls.
So this is going to be an interesting matchup, round one. So many of our duelists that we interviewed yesterday said that they thought the most represented deck would be Despia. That's going to be one of the decks we're going to see right off the bat here. Nicholas has come with a Despia list. It's one of the interesting ones, running Allure of Darkness to help speed through cards, get things banished, and get free resources that way. I kind of like that version of the deck with Allure of Darkness, but it does have some weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think how Allure of Darkness used to be viewed was it was a lot of, the faster I can turbo to those really powerful, impactful cards, the better, right? But now in more like modern Yu-Gi-Oh, sometimes you want those monsters in your hand, right? Not always are you trying to trade two away for something key. We saw it a lot, for example, like Burning Abyss was a good example, where sometimes you just wanted two monsters. You wouldn't want to trade one away for Allure of Darkness. So I can understand that well, but I'm also excited to see the deck on the other side.
Yes, Joseph's brought the Libromancers, the new world premiere team that was in Battle of Chaos and Dimension Force, to the table. And this deck, you can play it in a ton of different ways. You can play it, just straight up with the cards and the theme, in which case, it's kind of like on two modes. You either set up going first with trap cards, or you just try to deal 8,000 with Fire Burst. But the way Joseph is playing it here is very interesting. He's playing it a little more like a Drytron deck. Basically, the way Drytron works these days is you're setting up Vanity's Ruler and just blocking your opponent out of their special summons that way. The Libromancer deck can do very much the same thing, but it usually does so a little more efficiently and gets to play better generic cards like the Emergency Teleport for the Geek Boy and things like that. So I'm interested to see how this version of the deck is going to shape up as well. It's got no normal summons, the whole deck. It's all effects that are on special summon. So unless you want to put Manju or something in there for more ritual support, you can easily incorporate the Adventurer cards into this strategy to help you force your plays through and get the power of Draco back on your side, just in case they can't figure out what you've got.
Yeah, I think the big thing you lose by including sometimes cards like Manju is you really want to tribute Sunbei as ruler. Right, yeah. But main point being that you're on Ride Armus here, right? The Adventure cards still here in full force, still very powerful cards, right? We saw them a lot during the last Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series. They haven't left the fray. Still an incredibly impactful engine. We might not see it in every version of every deck, but still going to give Libromancers a huge boost.
I think it's mainly Despia that we've really seen the downturn in it. It's been kind of like a mainstay of kind of those synchro combo decks that aren't Sword Soul. Not really seeing it in Sword Soul, but the other ones, the ones that used Red Rose Dragon before, they're still going to do that now, and they're still going to use the adventure cards, but they need to find ways to replace some of the other combo lines they had. Aurora Dawn leaving has been a big deal for a lot of those synchro decks.
Yeah, I mean, Aurora Dawn, Meow Meow Mew, there are so many cards I feel like left the Forbidden Limited list that it's going to shake things up big, but the big thing with this adventure engine is we have to not rely on normal summon effects, right? But before we talk too much more, let's go ahead and head down to game one of our first match here at YCS Hartford. We'll see who exactly won the die roll. It looks like it might be, it is Joseph. He's going to start off with Water Enchantress of the Temple.
banishes Water Enchantress. He's going to get a copy of Rite of Aramasir from his deck to his hand.
Deck can get a Rite of Aramasir. I said no.
Yep. So Rite of Aramasir also pulls a card out of the deck. You special summon the Adventurer token first. There it is, the 2000 Earth Warrior. And then, if you don't already have Fateful Adventure on the field, Fateful Adventure you can place directly from your deck face up onto the field.
So I'll activate a Fateful Adventure and resolve the effect of Rite of Aramasir. We'll now activate the effect of Emergency Teleport.
Ooh, that's a great opening. Teleport Enchantress.
Strong, yeah, and it's going to get him his Geek Boy.
Yep. It's really him, Libromancer Geek Boy. So the Libromancer spell of choice is Libromancer First Appearance. Blocks off the search for Geek Boy using Fateful Adventure, so he can't be hit by Ash Blossom on the Geek Boy. Doesn't seem like he has it, though.
Geek Boy will grab a copy of Libromancer First Appearance, which would be like for me. I actually thought that's a card. Let me read those. It's 100% why we're not. Yeah, exactly. They're great. They're actually quite good.
Pulls the Draco back. Draco back is, like, it's not the Griffin Rider that actually gets you, it's the Draco back. Like, it's easy to clear out the Griffin Rider, but if you don't take out everything else as well, Draco back's going to get you on the next turn.
Yeah, it's interesting how, like, even though the adventure engine feels a little bit linear, like, it does the same thing every time, right? The fact that it sort of hits from all these different angles, right? Like, you get the token, you get the Wandering Griffin Rider, you also get the Draco back. It does a lot for what it does. There's all these things to worry about. So it looks like he's going to activate Pot of Prosperity next. Banish a full 6.
I'm going to take a look at what those top 6 are first, before he goes any deeper with the First Appearance. The First Appearance is a search effect. If you can pick up one of the things you're looking for here without having to use it, you're in business.
Yeah.
Your Servant's a pretty good one, though.
I hear it's okay.
So this is one of the things that you get to do with this deck that you wouldn't get to do with Drytron, is that you can incorporate a lot of the Dogmatica type cards.
Okay.
And it's also, like, interesting Dogmatica cards that you might not normally see, right?
Yep.
I'm going to activate the effect of Fateful Adventure here.
So he's going to finally trigger the Faithful Adventure.
The Wandering Griffin Rider.
Yep.
So Wandering Griffin Rider, that's the one most people are playing. But another one was released in Dimension Force that we've seen in a number of deck lists so far, the Illegal Knight.
He's going to go ahead and discard the Draco back to resolve that effect. Draco back's going to then trigger and equip itself onto the token. Nice that you just get to search something basically for free thanks to the Draco back.
Yep.
Alright,
It just does a ton, Draco back.
Right?
Libromancer First Appearance. Search Libromancer.
Alright, so First Appearance is in fact a searcher. It's First Appearance, though, so you can't take anything that has already appeared on the field.
I like that naming. Great Tide. Yep, so he's going to be able to search any Libromancer card that's not Geek Boy, and it looks like he grabbed Doombroker. I think that's what he has right there. Yep.
The Ritual Monster?
Yes.
Yep, that would be Doombroker. Doombroker is kind of a crazy card. So, the... Oh, he's going to special summon fire as well. That's a fantastic opening. So the way that the Libromancer Ritual monsters work is that they're kind of like transforming heroes. You special summon the smaller monsters of the field by revealing a ritual monster from your hand. They do something, and then you use the effect of First Appearance, which is kind of like Fusion Gate for rituals. You just get an unlimited number of ritual summons of Libromancers. And they kind of transform into their bigger forms, or their ritual forms. Now this is an interesting play. So, Libromancer Fire is a Cyberse monster, so you can use it to get Lingeribo here, the one that negates trap cards.
So, like, as a way to dodge, like, impermanence, or...
Yep.
I'll activate the Deer Servant here. Okay. I'm going to send from extra deck to...
Yeah, this opening seems so strong. The fact that it's just power card after power card, he's going to activate the Deer Servant next, and Herald of the Arclight. Ooh, and grabs another card that Nicholas might need to read.
Yeah, White Relic of Dogmatica is kind of a nasty one. It's only got 500 attack, but it has an effect on some that lets you match the attack points of two different monsters. That's not really why you play it, though. You play it because it has another effect that lets you take a look through your opponent's extra deck and just take their best card.
And it's whenever they special summon a monster from their extra deck, or
Yeah.
how does it trigger? Okay.
So they special summon one monster from the extra deck, and it's brutal on like link climbing decks, that sort of thing, because they have to play a Howl or something to get everything going, and you just take their end state or whatever the middling state is, like if they're relying on Selene, for instance.
Definitely a very cool card, like unique effect, right? Especially something that. Ooh.
Now he had Benton in hand as well.
It still has a normal summon, right? He didn't start with because he emergency teleported out the Geek Boy, and then
Yep.
Ooh-wee.
So he's going to get intervention. He gets a search for a fairy off of Cyber Angel Benton for Vanity's Ruler, which we talked about in the open. And just he's still got his normal summon available here. There's a question of what else is he going to get up to. Oh, and the fire is back in his hand. If you missed it, the Libromancer agent lets you get back a Libromancer card from the graveyard each turn. It's free if you take a monster. If you take a spell or trap, you have to put a card from your hand on the bottom of the deck.
Got it.
Helps review agents and Geek Boy to normal summon Vanity's. Oh, this is a very light.
Yeah. Now, the Doom Broker, we didn't even talk about the Doom Broker. Doom Broker sets the Libromancer trap from your deck. So he took intervention, which can negate a card effect, essentially, by returning the
Doom
ritual
Broker.
to the hand, and then he gets a special summon from the graveyard. So it de-transforms the monster.
Yeah, solid opening, which felt like
It is quite good.
yeah.
They can't get like eagerly too much against the Vanity Roller against the traps.
Yeah, Nicholas has super polarization, but
Negates.
not gonna do much against the Vanity's Ruler.
Okay.
Yep, can't activate it at all, and that's really important in this format. With super polymerization all over the place,
Yeah.
often in threes,
I will enter.
you need to have like
That's complete.
you have to block the special summon completely because you can't negate super poly.
I will. Oh, I guess not.
A huge board, huge opening turn from Joseph earns the instant concession from Nicholas. I think very wisely not showing any of his cards right there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like the only thing he can gain from that match is not having his opponent gain information, right? Yeah, definitely. Very interesting to see like Libromancer pop off like that. I'm a big fan of Vanity's Ruler. Anytime I can search a Vanity's Ruler and tribute something, that's probably something I'm a fan of. Ooh, this deck looks cool.
Vanity's Fiend, not cool. Vanity's Ruler, extreme.
Much cooler. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I guess, I mean, but we expect a lot of cards similar to that in the format, right? Vanity's Ruler, maybe one that some people consider a little less cool, like Artifact Scythe, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of just, like, stop special summoning, so you sort of have to build your deck to beat it in some way, right? But there's different ways to do it, especially because Artifact Scythe is going to be, like, an effect that triggers during your turn, but having, like, just that static effect of, you know, oh, you can't special summon, like, how many answers do you really have? There has to be something you can do post-side, right?
And that's one of the benefits to playing this deck as opposed to something with Scythe, for instance, or Dimensional Barrier. So, like, Scythe, there's a lot of things you can do about Scythe. There are fewer things you can do about Dimensional Barrier. There's basically nothing you can do in Game 1 about Ruler. And that's kind of the advantage that these ritual decks have. And it's easier for them, too, now that they got a second copy of Benton on the latest FNL list.
That's incredibly true. I mean, you have to rely on some interesting things, like the Deer Servant just kind of being an out, right? That's cool.
Yep.
There's little cool things you can do, but definitely not as common as, like, something you need to interact with, because you expect, like, Scythe very, very often, right? Vanity's Ruler probably a little bit less.
And the things that work against Scythe work against a lot of other things as well. You need a little more specific stuff for, say, Barrier, for instance. There's a little overlap with Ruler because you have Droplet. Cards like that can block both of those, but not Dimensional Barrier. It's just a matter of trying to guess what everybody else is going to play.
Yeah, or you could just, we saw it the last YCS, right? We saw Lich take second place.
Yep.
You could just try to ignore it. I think that is a very viable strategy still even right now, just with how much sort of like special summon hate exists in the current format.
Yeah, Eldritch probably lines up well against this sort of thing as well. You just pitch him in a trap and send it to the graveyard.
Yeah.
Now, not in that situation, because you also have to deal with a Griffin Rider and an intervention, and who knows what else. They've got Link Rebo out there. You're just going to have a bad time in that case. But in many cases, the effect of Eldritch is going to be useful.
It's gonna be an interesting time to see exactly how much of what enters the top cut. That's always my question when I start the weekend, right? Because everyone has a different idea of what's the best. Everyone has different variations of even those sub decks of what they really believe. But it's gonna be cool to see. There's a lot of really, really fun decks right now, right? Seeing what Libromancer does alone, that's a very fun deck, and that's one deck in this entire format, right?
Another one that I'm looking forward to seeing at some point during the event is the Sun Avalon. The Sun Avalon Therian deck. That deck is also really cool. And it does a lot of kind of the same things that you need to do to be successful in this format, but it uses just the very innocuous Sunseed. Just use my normal monster. What could possibly go wrong if I just play this normal monster? It turns out quite a lot. Hopefully we'll see it later. But for now, we are ready for Game 2, so let's get back into it. Libromancer versus Despia. Of course, Joseph doesn't know that it is Despia yet.
Yeah, but Nicholas now has a chance to go first, and
The whole last game was one big face.
Yeah, it's alright. They can draw this, so we'll not much stuff.
Okay.
So this is a nice bit of technical play that people have been picking up on lately. Whenever Droll and Lockbird becomes popular, and there are quick play spells that get you cards, players are getting a little more savvy to that. So using Branded Opening, for instance, if you want to drop a Luber from your deck during the draw phase so you can't get Drolled afterwards. Not this case, though, just a normal summon of a Luber.
yep, just that normal. So I'm gonna get him Branded Fusion.
Alright.
Now, Branded Fusion, if you're just coming in from Master Duel, for instance, you probably know a lot of these cards, like a Luber, but there are some of them that you might not have seen yet. Branded Fusion is one of them, and it is extraordinarily powerful.
Yep, and he's gonna go ahead and activate it. Joseph confirms he does not have Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring.
Now that. Now what's that? That's the tragedy in the graveyard. Yep.
Yep, gonna kick down both Fallen Albaz and Despian Tragedy.
And there is Lubellion. That's another one of the new ones from the Albaz Strike structure deck. Let's do another fusion.
Yeah, that's fine.
So Tragedy was sent as a fusion material, so that effect's going to go off as well.
There he is.
The Despia cards are just so cool to me. I don't know. As a big Shadal fan, it's so awesome to see a deck like this just exist in the current format. That it does so much. Branded Fusion alone is such a powerful card. It's such incredibly strong, just one card openings, right?
That's fine.
And Mirror Jade is another one of the Albaz Strike cards. It's a fusion of Albaz and basically anything from the extra deck, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link Monster. And it's got a couple of extremely powerful effects that make it difficult for opponents to keep monsters on field. Looking at the rest of the hand, I see Gold Sarcophagus there. That I haven't seen a whole lot of.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see exactly how these tools continue to tech out this deck, right? Because a lot of people expect Despia to be one of the most popular, but usually that also means it's there's a bunch of different ways to play it. You were mentioning Allure of Darkness earlier, right? So similar vein, kind of.
So it goes ahead and sends Albion to the graveyard with Mirror Jade, and banishes Mirror Jade itself. Now with Gold Sarcophagus, he goes ahead and banishes Mercurier. So Mercurier, when it's banished, gets you another Albaz. It's Fallen of Albaz or a card that mentions it. So mentions it. Older cards might have written something like that. Well, that card is specifically listed on that card. If you think about things like the Dark Magician related cards from Dark Illusion, they said that. The new wording for that is a card that mentions something, whatever that card name is.
Albion Shroud Dragon. I would then reveal Albion Shroud Dragon. Do you mind if I yes? That would make sense. Sure.
So Albion the Shrouded Dragon
It's more complicated to read it.
is it's a pretty good card. So it's another way to get through your deck a little bit. So you can send the basically a branded card from your deck to the graveyard and then reveal this. And wherever you send the card from, if it's hand or deck, you do something different. So when it's from deck, you put Albion on the bottom,
Yep.
and then you draw a card. So it's a way to dig through your deck. It technically doesn't reduce the deck size, but since Albion's on the bottom, it's effectively the same thing.
All right. Despia, I'm going to death for the Despia. And I'll make Masquerade and Blaze Drag.
No response to this. All right, we got classic polymerization.
Definitely a good one, especially when they're including like that Frankfurt package, right? Edge of chain. There's just so much value you get out of that small engine that even iconic classics like polymerization get incredibly worthwhile.
All right, and then that's ad libidum's effect.
I'll be on the Shroud Dragon. No response to this. I will set a Branded red. My deck.
Seems pretty good. That gives him another fusion summon available on the opponent's turn. We've got the Mirror Jade. He's got a Masquerade, which basically puts a tax on anything that you want to do. You pay 600 essentially to activate cards and effects. Saw a lot of that in the Fusion Festival very recently.
I bet, yeah. I think when we saw this deck at the previous YCS, like pre sort of Albat Strike, pre all that, it was all about just summoning him and a bunch of them, just making your opponent just like, tax is a good reason, like tax them as much as you can throughout the process. So you compared Libromancer a little bit to Drytron earlier, right? Drytron was known for being very good at breaking boards. How good is Libromancer at breaking boards?
So Libromancer Doombroker is a tremendously nasty card.
Talk about nasty cards. I'm going to pause you. Mystic Mind is going to be the first card for Joseph. But sorry, continue. So, Libromancer, Doombroker.
So, one of the things with Mystic Mind in this particular situation, kind of like interacting with Doombroker, is that as long as Joseph keeps one monster on the field, Doombroker, if you transform him, basically by tributing a monster on the field for the ritual, you can just attack directly.
Okay.
Just attack past everything.
Thing that applies.
Now, when he does damage, you can send a monster back to the opponent's deck. You can always do that. But it's really the direct attacking that gets you.
Yep.
The other thing it does, and you're not going to see it in this match because of the way the deck has been built, but if you're just using the Libromancer cards themselves, they have a new trap that lets you just steal your opponent's monster. So you return your monster to the hand, take theirs, and then if you return a ritual, you just keep it. And if you don't, their monster gets bounced away at the end of the turn anyways.
That's kind of cool. Kind of like a headhunt a little bit, almost.
Yep.
And then you're also not going to see this, but when we get the Libromancer deck added into the Rivalry of Warlords events, you can essentially use one of their new ritual monsters to zero out the attack points of a monster, and then hit over it with a double damage multi-attacker.
That's cool. That feels like iconic classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Something like Scapegoat, Fairy Meter, Crush, kind of as much damage as I can do, so do.
Oh, and we see the Frankfurt Patchwork coming down for Nicholas. He's going to go ahead and get his Edge of Chain and another copy of Polymerization. Guardian Chimera, a card that gets notably better when you have Polymerization in the graveyard. Not in this scenario, though.
Yeah. I still just can't get over how much value that card is. Frankfurt Patchwork, just how much it does for so little. Like, very innocuous, right? But it looks like play's going to pass back to Joseph. They're still just under the constraints of Mystic Mind.
Let's go ahead and set a card here. Oh, except Cyber Angel Ben 10 sets another card. So here's the thing. You can get rid of your own Mystic Mind whenever you like with Libromancer First Appearance, but if you're only playing one mind, you're not going to be able to get it back. You're going to need to be able to win right then if you do that. I think really the play here is probably... Yeah, I get the feeling that Nicholas may not have sided in spell and trap removal. You should, because Libromancer lives and dies off a field spell, essentially. You can only activate one of them per turn. So if you bust up their field spell in response to the search, they won't get the search, they can't activate another. So this is a matchup where I would want to have something in my deck to deal with field spells. And if Nicholas also figured that between games 1 and 2, he ought to have something in here for this mine.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think just the way Joseph's proctoring Chu, like, and the fact that he discarded the first appearance, knowing that Nicholas went through so many cards first, like, do you think he's just trying to see if he did? Like, checking him to see if he can deck him?
Yeah. Now, the Despia deck is usually bigger than whatever the other deck's going to be. It's played at 45, 46, somewhere in that range. But with the number of extra cards he's taken out so far, it's pretty obvious that his deck is thinner.
Yeah, he also fired off a Lure of Darkness after that, right? So at least a couple more cards, but you are correct. It looks like Nicholas is playing 46 to Joseph's 40.
Yep. So we had Aluber got one, Allure of Darkness got 2 more, Branded Fusion sent 2 more, and then he played Fright for Patchwork as well to add another 2.
And let's just proceed to answer. Yep.
And Nicholas can't help but laugh, but laugh followed by a hard sigh. We'll see.
And turn. And discard out and disrupt drag.
Oh, right on the play. Oh, the Masquerade really screws everything up.
So it looks like he drew. Is that Rite of Armus here?
It is.
And now he's considering doing something, maybe? Nope.
It is. It's tough because he's basically at a 600-point deficit here. They're not going to, like, this game is not going to drag out another 23 minutes. Like, that's just not going to happen. So I don't think that the life points particularly matter. It's just a matter of whether or not he can sweep everything away and win.
Thank you.
Preparation rights, we don't need that. We don't need open spell and trap zones either. Those are optional.
Clearly. It looks like he might have just sculpted his hand and what you assume is half of his hand set down there in spells to where we're going to see a lot of drawing and discarding. See if it's similar. Yep.
Yeah, there's got to be a Cosmic Cyclone in there somewhere, at least.
Good hope.
You don't, you're not going to remove it if it's already in your deck.
Right, yeah. Yeah, especially seeing it if it's in his main deck, right? He plays 1 copy for game 1 for situations like this. It would be surprising if it wasn't there, especially after seeing another impactful field spell, right? Like, even if you're not 100% familiar with Libromancer, you see 1, you're like, okay, maybe.
Oh, here we go. This could be interesting. He sent Snow to the graveyard with Foolish Burial.
So wait to, like, reduce the number of monsters he has on the field, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's not going to work unless Joseph plays a monster. But in theory, if Joseph gets antsy and doesn't play it out, I don't think he's going to, though. He seems pretty locked in on the particulars of this game.
Yeah. And I think that's respectable too, right? Like, you get to that point, especially like he's amassed the point where he's choosing this card, the card he draws every turn. His hand has to be good.
Yeah.
His set cards are good, right? At that point, like, why try almost, right? Like, why try to break your own Mystic Mind and break the lock if you have an inkling that your opponent didn't side correctly? But
I'll drop it.
it just seems like it might be a little bit more risk than reward. Especially because you'll lose life points in the process too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he picks up Libromancer Intervention and changes his mind. Decides that's the one he's going to take.
I'm going to activate Preparation of Rights.
Pay 6 to use Preparation of Rights.
Add from deck to hand.
And then's a card.
Chaos. Yep, I go to 68.
Can you grab the Illusion of Chaos? I saw him, it looked like he discarded a Magician's Souls earlier. So that's in the graveyard.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. See that case.
And then he pitches it.
Yeah. So really just making space for intervention.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I don't think he's playing the ritual spell, the Libromancer Bonded. So they got a ritual spell, which is interesting because it names 2 of the ritual monsters, so you can get either of them with pre-preparation of rights. But it's their only other way. Well, there's 2. Actually, sorry, there's 2. I don't think he plays Magic Girl either, though. So you're not entirely reliant on the rituals, on the field spell. But the Magic Girl only ritual summons during your opponent's turn, so that's not useful for getting something out like Doombroker. And the ritual spell is best when you're playing Fireburst and Firestarter, 2 cards that Joseph is not. So I don't think he's got that.
Anytime you can play pre-prep, it's a little tempting, though.
Yeah.
Like, especially when Drytron went that way with Herald of Perfection rather than Ultimate in this, definitely very tempting to play that card, yeah. Like Remnants, it's a Fright for Patchwork, right? Just anything that could give you an extra one, ooh, we take those. At this point, Nicholas has had the out as well, right? Because maybe he would have, like, conceded by now, do you think? Like, at one point, do you just decide, like, oh, maybe I should? Or do you think you got 23 minutes left, maybe your opponent breaks their own Mystic Mine? I guess you're giving up a game that you might potentially win if they just break it.
Yeah, well, you're already down a game, right?
So no point.
There is no game.
No value.
Now, in this particular tournament circumstance, where you can't eat or drink on the floor,
oh, that's value.
there could be value in it in that case if you gotta hit the concession stand outside.
But you also have to assess it's round one. Is the concession stand open? There's not, you don't have perfect information.
It's true. It's true.
A lot of factors at play. A lot of factors at play here.
It's not lunchtime yet.
Speaking of which, yeah, we were talking about changing the YCS. We have lunch breaks now and
Yeah.
player meetings. Yeah, for newer duelists, this is completely unheard of. For ones who've been around the block for a while, that was how it used to be back in the day. It's very exciting.
This except called by the grave. So he looked through his deck when he had Foolish Barrier earlier, and you got to figure he was looking through to make sure he still had whatever the out is.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Setting it back. Okay, that doesn't mean too much, right? Because one of these could be just one you could easily flip.
Yeah.
Right.
There it is. He
Oh,
picked up the
yes.
Cosmic Cyclone. Now, the one he just said, I think, is called by the grave.
Okay.
We just saw him pick that up as well, and he checked Joseph's graveyard, which tracks there.
So in terms of defense from this deck, right, after the Mystic Mine is broken,
Yeah, after the
Not
Mystic
much.
Mine is broken, the way they've got it built here, it's basically nothing. He's got no monsters on the field, so even if he was playing the Libromancer traps, he wouldn't be able to use them. They require a monster on the field to bring back to your hand.
Targeting the Water Enchantress. In response to this.
So Enchantress gets banished. That'll, the negation on that, on the activated effects, will carry over through into Joseph's turn. He's got the Cosmic Cyclone. Let's see if Joseph sided anything here. Or if...
Yep.
Nope, the mine is gone.
so here's the punish for not breaking your own mind, right? Basically, like, set your opponent up where you've given him enough turns where if Nicholas can't deal enough damage to you, something went wrong. Something went wrong.
Yeah, I feel like we've watched this game a ton of times in the last few YCSs. There's always somebody who plays mine, and they always lose that game. After a long, protracted battle where somebody eventually draws the card they need to beat it.
Yeah.
But people keep doing it. They keep trying it, and I've never seen it work on stream, at least.
Mine's incredibly powerful card, right? Like, no one will say it's not. Incredibly powerful card, but, like, the trap of it is exactly this, right? Like, you can get lost in your own mind. And it's that, like, ooh, maybe they didn't side the out. It's especially strong in decks like Drytron was a good example. Ones that you don't have any spell or traps for your opponent to worry about. This one, though, just because they're so reliant on that field spell, like you mentioned, it's surprising to see if they didn't, like, bring something in.
And Nicholas fuses Ad Libitum from his hand with 2 fusions on the field for Guardian Chimera. So he's got Polymerization in the graveyard, so that's going to be untargetable. It's going to destroy 2 cards on the field and draw 1 card for Nicholas.
So we're just gonna come back. Gonna get a lot of effects off this Guardian Chimera, as you mentioned.
Draws 1 card, and then takes out an Emergency Teleport and Pot of Prosperity. The Guardian Chimera is quite hefty. It's 3,300 attack and defense, 1,100 for each head there. And its materials are just 3 monsters with different names.
Yeah, very cool card, right? Like, very cool card, very powerful card. Does a lot of things, as you mentioned, right?
One thing it doesn't do is work for super polymerization. You can't take your opponent's cards with it. It's got to be cards in your hand and your field.
That's really good.
And it's still good enough for Despia duelists to play 2 of them. And with polymerization in their deck as well, they get the additional effect.
Sure.
It's a dark monster, so we can use it for rebellion.
Start to take off. Yep. That's
Yeah, checks, rebellion, confuse things basically from your graveyard and banished. You just shuffle all of that stuff back in. It's kind of the reverse of Albion. So Albion is free, doesn't have a discard, but it banishes the materials. You discard for rebellion, but you get the materials back into your deck.
Both incredibly powerful effects, though, regardless of how you look at them. Especially how they work, like, in tandem.
Together.
Yeah.
I think you just go for damage, just go for game here.
Yeah, you have to, right? Especially after waiting that long in the mine. I would be eager. I'd be like, no, this game needs to end now.
Like if
on my turn.
If it has another mine, then you're out of luck.
Yes.
But people that are just running this one mine kind of thing to catch people off guard, just run the one mine.
yeah, I guess it'll be.
He could have sided in more mines, I guess, if that was going to be the game plan here.
Right.
That would be interesting. That'd be super, super interesting. If it isn't one of those things where, like, depending on how familiar your opponent is with your deck, is how many Mystic Mines you decide to bring in, kind of thing.
It could be.
Yeah.
I think that's game on board. That's over 7,000 at least.
It has to be. Yeah, it just depends. I don't think Joseph's going to be one to concede though until the deed is done.
Yeah, there is a chance that he either doesn't attack with everything or uses an effect that stops him from attacking.
Yeah.
Battlefield. Yep. That's a great attack. Masquerade. There's Masquerade.
Masquerade hits.
3. Did sure. That's gonna be.
Yep, everything connects, and that'll do it for game 2. Well, the Mystic Mine Gambit backfires in this case, and we are headed to game 3.
Yeah, which means Libromancer's going first though.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is a completely different game, as we mentioned.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of, what has Nicholas learned from game 1? Now that he knows, what's going to happen here, I mean, Joseph's not going to drop Mystic Mine on himself on the first turn, unless his hand is just not playable.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because he both wants, like, Outs to Mine and Ruler.
Yeah.
Right? Like, two very, very different, like, axes to try to fight on.
Yep. It's a tough ask.
Yeah, big ask. A big ask. And even then, like, we saw how strong of a board it was turn 1, right? It's not just the answer to Vayne's Ruler. It's an answer to Vayne's Ruler through things like Lingaribo, through Intervention, through all these other cards.
Yeah, the Lingaribo is interesting because it means, a card I haven't seen a whole lot of, but it might be lurking out there. Evenly matched is not going to be useful in this scenario.
We saw a lot of it evenly matched. I can't remember if it was the last one I see, but there was a recent event where it just seemed like there was a ton of them, like a ton. And I know in, like, certain... It's one of those cards that is also just very... what's the word I'm looking for? Like, seductive a little bit, right? Like, you see it, you're like, ooh, this could just do a
How
lot.
many cards?
Yeah, especially because the Adventure Engine, right?
Yes.
Like, they always have that face-up token, so it's like, you have to banish everything but that. Ooh, is that nice. Evenly matched was always before, like, oh, you get rid of everything but your best card. And now it's everything but your token.
Yep.
And then it's much less even.
Yeah.
Much less evenly.
And if you're wondering at home, what's up with that? Can't they just choose to banish the token face down? They cannot. Tokens cannot be face down at all, ever, in any way. That includes trying to banish them face down. Even though they would vanish when they leave the field, the specific action you have to take is banish face down, and that's not something you can do with a token, so you're forced to keep it. Banish everything else.
It's definitely interesting. This card interactions like that, right? Like the weird corner case, like, oh, this is just how Yu-Gi-Oh works. So because of this card is fantastic. I love those. I love
that's
those.
the DNA of Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yes.
Think back to, say, I mean, this isn't something that works in the actual game, but the Strings Duel in the original series, where Yugi brain controls the revival jam while it's reforming and causes an infinite loop to deck out strings.
I never thought about that as like, oh, that's actually real Yu-Gi-Oh, but that is real Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yep.
What happened right there? Not real, but the most real at the same time. Ooh, iconic duel as well, right?
Yep.
Oh man, strings. I miss that guy. What happened to you, strings? Where you at?
I think he went running down a beach and just never stopped running.
He deserves. I love that for him. He deserves it.
Oh, all right. Duelists look like they are ready to go here for game 3. I'm ready to go for game 3.
Same. It's going to be a good one. I mean, both these decks, very fun to watch, right? Very powerful ritual deck, very powerful fusion deck. We've seen a lot of this in like recent formats as well. Like, seems like these other summoning techniques, like they definitely have strong representation, right?
Like we got 3 or 4 right now. We got a really good fusion deck, a really good ritual deck, a really good synchro deck, really good link deck. Well, many link decks. Most link decks are good.
Links can also just make like appearances and other things, right? That's the they link the bridges.
Now we just got to get some Xyz monsters in there,
Yep.
and maybe some pendulum cards back. They got monkey board back.
Nice.
Got some new stuff in Dimension Force. Maybe we'll see some of that this weekend. That is a significantly less good start from Joseph. Significantly.
Very, very rough, yes. And it looks like the start from Nicholas is going to be much stronger.
Yep, he's got the Luber. The Luber is going to go through here. It's Branded Lost. This card is, if you know how Magical Meltdown works, it's kind of similar to that. It helps protect your fusions and fusion summons. But in this case, it's specifically for these Albaz guys.
He's going to follow that up with Branded Fusion. Looks like that's the Tragedy and Fallen of Albaz.
Yep, same play as last time. Same result as last time with Lubellion.
Rebellion, discard cost first for anything else. I would do chain link 1, chain link 2, chain link 3.
Branded Lost is going to get him a card as well. It's a little different from Magical Meltdown. Magical Meltdown gets you the card on activation. This gets you it later on when you actually do a thing.
Still very like interesting effects, right? Like the protection in general is something that can really like open up a game for you.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Axis Code Talker. It's part of why that card is so strong too.
Yes. That's a great example, actually.
Tragedy.
He gets Albion and he gets Dramaturge as well. And now we're going to resolve Lubellion and do a fusion. Plays only 1 Lubellion, so that goes back into the extra deck. Some people play 2 so that they don't have to do it this way. There's some greedier lines of play that you can make by not using the Lubellion. I don't know how much that's worth it when what you do generally is so strong in the first place. Why take the risk?
Yeah. And another common trap for some of these like quote unquote like best decks, right? Or decks that usually have the big targets on their head, right? That I can already do so many powerful things, but it's like, but I could do more. I could do more.
What?
But do you need to? Yeah, exactly. There's big what ifs. Another exciting thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? And its DNA, there's always the like, but I could just push it a little further. I could include like 3 more cards and do something really crazy though.
But what if I just went to 60? Just play 60.
Contract. I mean, if we would have talked about this, like, look at Yu-Gi-Oh! A few years ago, like the year of Upstart Goblin, things like that, right? Where duels are just casually played like 46, 52, just like however many numbers.
Doing everything to not play cards, and now they're just not chuck it in there. Yeah, let's go.
I mean, just there's so many strong cards, right? There's so many powerful, and they bridge between each other too, right? There's just so many cool, powerful things you can do. Really, the limit here is the extra deck.
Yeah, well,
that is the one thing
that's the limiting factor.
it is. Thankfully, like thank Raw that the extra deck is stuck at 15.
And he spent 2 slots of it on Guardian Chimera. That card's so strong.
Right.
Activates Polymerization, summoning it the classic way, using both monsters on the field. 1 in hand. It's going to destroy both of those cards.
Yeah.
Takes out Called by the Grave. See, now that's interesting. That is interesting.
They did choose to use
Never
the
use the Call by the Grave on any of those points. Like, there's certain points you can't do it, like in response to the fusion, for instance. Actually, you can't do it in response to fusion. You just can't. But there were opportunities there to use the Call by the Grave. I don't think it matters in this case.
I feel like his hand was so good. Nicholas' hand was so good, and Joseph's hand was so bad. It just didn't matter.
Yeah.
But it is interesting knowing that, like, this is the only card I could play, right? Like, I drew 5 cards to school. There's one card I could activate, but
Yeah, that's rough. So his opening hand was Intervention, which just worked without a monster. Called by the one-up card that he can play. Dragoback, not useful without the token or anything else. Wandering Griffin Rider, which you can at least throw onto the field. You're allowed to do that even if you don't have the thing. And a Benton, which doesn't help without any of the rest of your cards.
yeah, definitely an unfortunate loss there. But we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. We'll be back with an interview with our winner, so make sure to stay tuned to YCS Hartford.